Okay, this is my reference photograph on a video of a silhouetted tree. Very early in the morning, about 6:30 a.m. And it's a little dark on the back, but you don't really do the silhouette is what I'm looking for. Now here's my setup. I got a drawing pad, uh, watercolor paper with on my easel. And there's my travel set, my Everett Watercolors travel set with the primary colors. Now, first step I do is I do a drawing here. I had a preliminary drawing started. Now I'm going to put more detail uh, with a mechanical pencil. So there's a little reference photograph up there to the left that I'm drawing. That's what I'm looking at as I draw. And I'm trying to capture the main shapes, the trunk and the main limbs of the tree before I start painting. Okay, now start painting. There's my brushes. I'm going to start out with several brushes. I got several brushes here with my palette. I got my standard brushes that comes with the travel set, and I've got a couple extra brushes. Uh, and I'm going to do a simple background, and there's a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'm just going to do a simple background, light blue paint, ultramarine blue, and just going to put that in the background as a simple starting point. Now, there's a little bit of water in the background, so I'm just going to put the indication of a little water here at the waterway behind the tree. So again, a little ultramarine blue, and just to capture the water there in the background. I'm mixing up a little bit of green, ultramarine blue with lemon yellow, and that'll be the grass. So I'm capturing a little bit of grass here also in the scene. So I'm just kind of blocking in some of the major elements here before I start the tree. So this is the first wash, light color right now to start out with. Start out with a light color. Adding a little bit more color to it, just to darken it up a little bit more. Add a little bit of ultramarine blue to that mixture to darken the green. I'm using a quill brush in case I didn't mention that. it holds a lot of paint, a lot of water, and it's easy to block in the main shapes. And a little roadway here, simple roadways. So it's just a asphalt surface there. So just a little bit of Payne's gray, just to capture the little road here along the foreground. Again, just capturing some of the major shapes here before I start the lone tree. Now I'm adding the tree background. There's a background behind the tree. So this is the background row of background trees, and they're very dark now because it's early in the morning. So it's just a dark green color. I mixed that green and mixed a lot of ultramarine blue to get that much darker. But it's just a dark shape behind the tree to block in the major elements here on the scene. This initial steps here is very important to block in the main shapes, the main elements that I want to capture, and just to block in the main shapes. Simplify a lot of detail. Not necessary to put everything in the painting. Just the main elements. This is the background trees, just behind the waterway. Here. I'm just painting the edge of the waterway where the trees come right down to the edge. Give me a nice, clean looking background. I always like to work on the edges, keep them nice and interesting. I vary the shapes, the sizes, adding a little value to that to make a little shadow pattern inside the tree line. And now we'll take a look at the overview again. A little summary here. There's a close up of what I've done so far. The background trees, got the major elements in there, and it's a little bit lighter today. The sun has come up a little bit more in the morning, and that's the main trunk of that silhouetted tree. Now I changed my brush. This is one of my travel brushes. This is a half-inch flat brush, natural hair. I'm going to mix up a little more of that green. I want to darken the grass a little bit more. Add a little more green here to the grass. You know, as I paint along in Plein Air, what I do is I adjust the colors, adjust the values as I go along, because you know the watercolor dries during the process, and so as it dries, it's going to look lighter sometimes. So I'm just trying to capture what I feel the value is, the dark and the lights, correcting the shapes as I go along. So this is a process in the painting that you get used to all the time, is correcting the values as you go along. Also, you know, playing a little, correcting some of the, defining the edges along the road there. So this is kind of clean up the foreground here. So part of the plein air experience is to observe those elements around, and also to you know, capture the color and the shape. But I'm observing all the time. Every time I look at the area, I'm picking up things I want to make sure I put into the painting. And also simplify. Eliminate things that are not necessary to tell the story. And my story today is this silhouetted tree, because it's very early in the morning. The lighting is just beginning, the sunrise is just starting up, so it's pretty dark out here in this area. But I have a nice silhouette because the light's coming up behind the trees. You know, while the paint is still a little bit wet and damp in the background, I'm taking my pencil and I'm taking the lid out. And what I'm doing, I'm scraping in some tree trunks in the background. Again, just I add a little bit of detail, not too much, but just a hint of some tree trunks back there. So the scratching technique, while the paint is still damp, will give me those marks. And again, it's just a good practicing technique. I like to experiment while I'm doing my plein air to try different techniques to see how they work out. A little more value on the roadway. Darken it up again. It lightened up a little bit as it dries. Put another layer of. That's using Payne's gray. Just kind of darken it down. Don't want that too light. Okay, now I've got the quill brush again. I'm going to start painting the tree. So I've got a little bit of ultramarine blue mixed in with a little bit of burnt sienna. Gives me a dark brown. Maybe going to be very dark. It's going to be almost black. And I've got a copy of my picture up there in the left-hand corner. Gives me my reference. And that's what I'm looking at as I'm painting this particular tree. So this stage here is I'm blocking in the main shapes of the tree. Get the main branches, the main trunk, and the main branches that go off of the trunk. And I really enjoy painting trees. That's why I chose this morning. I really wanted to find something that was fairly simple to paint, but also with some interesting shapes and something to demonstrate, how to do a plein air on site of a subject. And this is one good way to get started. Pick something it's fairly something you like to paint, and then find a good location, good lighting, and then enjoy the plein air experience. I'm going to capture the main trunks and the main branches. There's a lot of branches, a lot of small branches on this tree, but I want to get the major, large branches here. And you'll notice from the photograph, which is I'm looking at the same tree. That photograph is what I'm looking at on right here on site. I'm capturing the shape of those limbs as they come off the main trunk. And I'm calling this a tree silhouette. But really, I could almost call it a tree portrait because I'm really painting the tree just like I would paint anything else. So I'm really painting a portrait of a tree. I had thought about that as I was doing this video. So observation, checking the size and the shape and the position and the angles. Comparing the distances of the branches from one another. Getting the proper position. That's all observation skills that you get by practicing drawing, practicing painting. And it comes through exercise of drawing and painting more over and over. The more you paint, the more you draw, the better you'll get. Now, at this stage, I'm blocking in the main limbs and the main shapes of the tree. Now we'll take another review. Now that's a little bit lighter now. The sun's coming up a little more. Been about 20 minutes into the painting, so it's gotten a little brighter. The light's a little more brighter right now. I'm still blocking in the tree. All right, now I picked up my my number 6 round, which is in the travel set, and now I'm going to do more detail on the branches with a smaller brush. So now I'm going to get some smaller limbs, and also adding more detail to the shapes of those limbs now, getting the sizes, angles, and so forth, edges. So there's a little more detail work now with a smaller brush. Also adding a little more value, get them a little darker, because in a silhouette, this is a dark subject matter with the lighting behind. In drawing a tree, you can get lost in trying to capture all the limbs and so forth. So it's best to just capture the main shapes, capture the main limbs, and the rest will take care of itself. The main limbs will give you the characteristic of the tree. So you'll notice here I'm adding more detail to the branches now, making them a little more defined, a little more detail in the shapes. And I'm painting what I see. I'm looking at a photograph on the bottom left there is what I'm looking at, but I'm following exactly what I see. I'm observing the shapes, and then I'm painting out what I see. Adding some smaller branches that I see, just adding a little more detail with a smaller brush. And I'm moving more into the center of the tree now, getting that left side of the tree branch shapes and configuration. Also working on the edge of the trunk. And we're adding more detail to the shape, cleaning up the edges, adding a little more value, making it darker because it's silhouetted. Adding some more smaller branches to define some of the shapes, also to fill in some of those spaces up there. Following the design of the tree itself. I got one more big old branch over here on the left side. Has some interesting shapes to it. And you can notice some observation. Each branch is a little bit different angle, different size. Now I'm cleaning up the edge of the trunk here, make it a nice shape on the bottom of the tree. Lots of branches on this tree. But I'm just capturing some of the major branches, some of the major smaller branches. Not getting too much detail, but just enough to define the shape and the characteristic. And now come down. I'm going to work on the trunk now. Come down. Just probably the most important part of the tree is the trunk after the branches. I'm going to clean up the edges. Also clean up the bottom part that comes into the grass. Now we're working down at the bottom of the tree where the roots are that goes into the ground. And every tree has a broader base than anywhere else on the trunk at where it meets the ground. Little touches up in the top. Just doing little. Watercolor dries as you paint along. So as you see where you need to add more color, you just add it in there. That's what I'm doing. And I'm going to finish up the base here at the bottom of the tree. Get a nice clean edge. And now we're going to take take an overview here. And I'm going to hold it up and you get a close-up now of what I'm doing. It's a close-up of the painting. You see the scratches I made there in the background with the pencil, showing the trunks in the background, trees. Here now I got an old bristle brush from the hardware store. Very inexpensive brush, but it comes out very nice. This is a good brush to use for putting in the leaves. So I mixed up some dark green, and what I'm doing now is just using a little stabbing stroke. Just stab the paper with the edge of the brush. But it's got a nice rough texture look with those bristles. And that's all I need to put in some of those leaves that are still on the tree. This is early fall, so those leaves are going to leave this tree. You're going to be bare in the wintertime. All the leaves will be gone. But right now there's a few leaves still hanging on. So I'm just, again, I'm painting the clusters. I don't worry about individual leaves and so forth, but I'm trying to capture the main clusters of leaves coming off these branches. So at this stage, you just capture a cluster of leaves and also leaving some open spaces, which is what from the photograph you can see there's a lot of open spaces. Now I'm going back to this small brush, the more small round brush, and I'm going to go and just hit a few places to just a little more definition here and there, working on the edges of those clumps of leaves, darken them up a little bit. So here I'm adding a little more detail to the clusters. Again, we don't want to overdo too. Here I'm adding some little branches now, kind of adding a little more darkness in there with the branches, adding a little more detail, trying to connect some of those clusters of leaves with a branch, smaller branches, and going to just get enough detail to do the characteristic. You don't have to overdo too much, but you want to have enough there to indicate the elements, the branches, the leaves, clusters. Minimize as much as possible. Simplify. Okay, we're going to cut around back to the overview now. This is the finished painting. They're going to get an overview. That's the final look at the tree itself. Beautiful silhouette. Just love it. And then come back down to the painting. That's the final view right there. Also, there's my setup of paints. That's all I use, the brushes and my travel set with just the primary colors with burnt sienna and yellow ochre, a little bit of Payne's gray with the primary colors. My dot spray bottle, Everett Watercolors dot sprayer, sold exclusively on Everett Watercolors.